There's a pretty simple way to understand why Rust is different from every other survival game ever made, and it comes down to one thing. When you log off for the night in Rust, your body is still there. It doesn't disappear. It just lies on the ground, completely vulnerable with everything you spent the last 6 hours gathering still sitting in your inventory, and somebody can walk up, loot you while you're asleep, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. That one mechanic alone tells you everything you need to know about the design philosophy of this game. Rust doesn't care about your feelings. It does not want to make you comfortable. It wants to put you in the most socially and psychologically intense environment a video game has ever constructed, and then it wants to watch what happens. And the thing is, this game is over 10 years old now. Facepunch Studios released it in early access back in 2013, and it has had, by a wide margin, more staying power than basically any other survival game in the genre it helped define. There are kids who were in elementary school when this game came out who are now playing it in college. And you have to ask yourself why, especially when you look at the pile of games that tried to do what Rust does and fell completely flat. The Forest came and went. DayZ had its moment. Ark had a long run but a messy one. Scum, The Cycle, Miscreated, the list goes on and on. All of these games looked at what Rust was doing and tried to grab a piece of it, and none of them quite got there. So what did Rust actually figure out that nobody else could? The first thing you have to understand is that Rust is not really a survival game, in the way most people think about survival games. Most survival games put you in a world that is trying to kill you, and the challenge is navigating that world well enough to stay alive. Hunger mechanics, temperature, wildlife, all of that stuff. And Rust has all of those things too, but they're almost beside the point. Because in Rust, the thing that is actually going to kill you, the thing you spend every waking moment thinking about, is other people. The primary threat in this game is not a bear or a wolf or the cold. It is the guy who just spawned in 3 minutes ago, picked up a rock off the ground, and is now sprinting towards you because he wants whatever you have in your pockets. That shift in design priority changes everything about how the game feels and how it operates, and it is the foundational decision that makes Rust work. Because here's the thing about building a game around human interaction rather than environmental challenge. When the environment is your enemy, you can kind of predict it. You can learn it. You can build a checklist of things to do and things to avoid, and the game becomes a series of systems to understand and eventually master, which we saw very clearly with Minecraft. But when other players are your primary threat, you can never fully predict anything. You are always one unexpected decision away from losing everything you have, and that unpredictability is what generates the kind of tension and emotional investment that no single-player survival game or PvE-focused multiplayer game can really replicate. The most dangerous thing in Rust has human psychology behind it, and human psychology is not a system you can master. Then there's the base building, which sounds like it should be a relaxing crafting game mechanic, but in Rust is actually among the most important things you have to do. You spend your first few hours on a server gathering resources and putting together a small shack somewhere on the map with one airlock. And slowly this little base starts to feel like something. You put real hours into it. You stashed your good gear in there, your weapons, your resources. It starts to feel like a home in the way that sounds embarrassing to say out loud, but is completely real to anybody who has actually played this game. And then you go to sleep and wake up, and someone has blown a hole through your wall with C4 while you were offline, taken everything and left. And the thing is, the game does not protect you from this. There is no mechanism in Rust that says you can only be raided while you are online. That's a design choice, and it is an absolutely brutal one. And it is also the right one, because that constant threat of losing everything is exactly what makes every hour you spend building feel meaningful. The stakes are real in a way that they are not in almost any other game. Compare this to something like Ark Survival Evolved, which is probably the closest competitor Rust has had in terms of scale and ambition. Ark has a much larger gap, and most importantly, it has turrets, and if you can get tech turrets, you're pretty much safe for the first day or two of wipe. But that doesn't exist in Rust. It's a lot easier to come up in Rust and Snowball to a point where you can be raiding bases. because in Ark, you would need to grind a lot more to catch up, and there's never really a point in Rust where you can feel safe, because anyone can get a gun fairly quickly and kill you, even if you're the most geared tribe on the server. In Ark, PvP is a lot more different. You can't go from spawning on a beach to being able to kill someone in a tech suit within an hour unless you play on some crazy modded servers. In Ark, you can feel invincible at a certain point, because there are just so many stages of PvP, but that isn't the case in Rust, and is why it feels so much more like a survival game. That voice chat system is another thing that sets this game apart in a way that is difficult to overstate. In most multiplayer games, when you encounter a stranger, you're separated from them by team colors and lobby menus and structured formats. In Rust, when a stranger walks up to you while you are chopping wood and says something through their microphone, you can hear them as if they are right next to you in the real world. And in that moment, you have to make a decision. Are they friendly? Are they about to shoot you? Are they trying to buy you time while their teammate flanks around behind you? That proximity voice chat turns every single player encounter into a negotiation and a psychological puzzle, and it creates stories that are completely unscriptable. People have made alliances in Rust by talking their way out of getting killed by a stronger player, and then spent the next week building together and watching each other's backs. And people have had those exact same alliances crumble when one person decided that the other's loot was too good to pass up. You cannot write that. It just happens because you put a bunch of people in a room with no rules and let them talk to each other. And that is really the core of what Rust does that nobody else has managed to fully replicate, which is that it generates real stories. Actual unscripted drama between real people with real consequences attached to their decisions. And it is partially why Rust movies do super well on YouTube. And while some are scripted, a majority are unscripted and just super entertaining. And if you can get cool stories with a beginning, middle, and end, with nearly every wipe, that just shows how good of a game Rust is, and how it creates the circumstances for people to basically live mini lives inside of the game with every wipe. What Rust ultimately did was something that game designers had been circling around for years without landing on cleanly, which is that the most powerful source of tension in a multiplayer game is not a scary enemy or a brutal mechanic, but the fundamental unpredictability of human beings. Other people in Rust are not NPCs following a script. They are real people with real motivations and real psychology. And they can be cruel or generous or calculating or completely irrational, and you never fully know which one you are dealing with until you are already in the middle of it. That is not something you can program into a single-player game. It only exists in a system where the stakes are real and the other players are real and the game gets out of the way and lets human nature do what it does. That is what Rust figured out. That is why after 12 years it still has a thriving player base and a constant stream of content creators making videos about it, and why every month there are people who have played thousands of hours logging back in on Wipe Day like it is the first time, because it is the only game that truly perfected survival PvP. Not by making the survival harder or the PvP more mechanically deep, but by designing a world where other people are the most dangerous and interesting thing in it, and then trusting those people to create something worth experiencing. Rust did not just set the standard for survival PvP, it set the standard for what it means for a multiplayer game to feel genuinely alive.